I never expected that a simple cry for help would turn into something that would change the way I saw myself, my life, and someone I barely knew. My name is Emily Parker. I was 42 years old, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. I worked as a middle school English teacher, the kind of job that kept me busy correcting essays, reading late into the night, and pouring more of myself into other people's children than I sometimes did into my own personal happiness. I had been divorced for nearly 5 years, and though I told everyone I was fine, that I enjoyed my independence, there were evenings when the silence in my house felt heavier than I could bear. It was on one of those evenings that my story began. A storm had rolled in suddenly, knocking out the power in my neighborhood. The air conditioning stopped, the fridge clicked off, and the house was left in the eerie hum of nothingness. I lit a few candles and tried to focus on grading, but then I heard it, the dripping sound. At first, I ignored it, thinking maybe it was the rain hitting the gutters, but then I realized water was leaking right through my kitchen ceiling. My heart sank. I grabbed a bucket and set it beneath the dripping spot, watching helplessly as water splashed inside. I had no idea what to do. That's when I thought of my neighbor. His name was Ryan Miller. He had moved into the house 2 doors down just 6 months earlier. I didn't know much about him, except that he was in his mid-30s, tall, always seemed to be working on something outside, and carried himself with an ease that made me notice him every time I passed. I had exchanged polite smiles with him a few times, the kind neighbors give when mowing the lawn or carrying groceries in. But that was it. I hesitated at first, embarrassed to ask for help. But as the dripping grew louder and my anxiety rose, I finally grabbed my umbrella, slipped on my raincoat, and ran through the storm to his porch. When Ryan opened the door, I almost turned back. He was standing there in a gray t-shirt, his hair damp, probably from working outside before the storm started. His eyes were a striking shade of blue, calm but attentive, and for a moment, I forgot the words I had rehearsed in my head. "Sorry to bother you," I managed. "It's just, there's a leak in my kitchen ceiling, and I don't know what to do. Could you maybe help?" Without hesitation, Ryan grabbed a flashlight, pulled on a jacket, and said, "Of course. Let's go take a look." Back inside my house, he inspected the ceiling with a focused seriousness. He climbed up on a chair, poking gently at the damp plaster, then nodded as though confirming something to himself. "Looks like the storm loosened some shingles on your roof," he explained. "It's not too bad right now, but it'll need patching before it gets worse. I can put a tarp over it for tonight to stop more water from coming in." Relief washed over me. "Thank you so much. I wouldn't even know where to begin." He smiled. "That's what neighbors are for." As he worked, climbing up onto the roof in the pouring rain while I held the ladder steady, I found myself watching him. There was something about the way he moved, confident but not arrogant, focused yet kind, that drew me in. I told myself it was nothing. He was just helping. That was all. When he finally came back inside, soaked to the bone, I offered him a towel and some tea. He accepted with a grin. "Feels like I just ran through a car wash," he joked, shaking water from his hair. I laughed, maybe a little too much, because I was nervous. Nervous about how comfortable it suddenly felt to have him in my kitchen, sitting across from me as if he belonged there. That night was the beginning of something I didn't anticipate. Over the next few days, Ryan came back to check on the roof, making sure the tarp was holding, and then eventually helping me schedule a proper repair. He never acted like it was a burden, never once made me feel silly for not knowing what to do. Instead, he explained everything with patience, showing me where the damage had been, even teaching me how to spot future problems. Somewhere between those visits, our conversations stretched beyond roofs and repairs. I learned that Ryan worked as a firefighter. He had been through his share of tough calls, but he spoke of his work with quiet pride. He had grown up in a small town in Montana, moved to Denver for a change of pace, and though he loved his job, he admitted that it could feel isolating at times. In turn, I found myself opening up about my own life. My divorce, my job, the way I sometimes felt invisible in the routines of my days. To my surprise, he didn't look at me with pity. Instead, he listened, really listened, in a way that made me feel heard for the first time in years. One evening, after he had helped secure the final repairs, I insisted on cooking him dinner as a thank you. I spent hours preparing, fussing over the table, trying to make everything perfect, even though I told myself it was just a gesture of gratitude. When he arrived, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers he said he'd picked up on the way, I felt something inside me stir. Something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. The night unfolded with laughter, easy conversation, and moments where our eyes lingered on each other's a little longer than they should have. I told myself again it was nothing. But deep down, I knew it was something. It didn't happen all at once. It was small things, the way he remembered details I had mentioned, the way he checked in on me after a long day at work, the way he looked at me like I was more than just a tired teacher in her 40s. One Saturday, he asked if I wanted to join him for a hike in the mountains. I almost said no, out of old habits of holding back, but I said yes. That hike, with the crisp air filling my lungs and the sight of endless pine trees around us, was the first time in years I felt truly alive. By the time we sat at the top of the trail, looking out at the valley below, Ryan turned to me and said softly, "You know, Emily, I'm really glad you knocked on my door that night." My heart raced. I smiled, but words failed me. Because I knew then, what started as me just wanting help had become something else entirely. He wasn't just a neighbor anymore. He wasn't just a kind man who fixed my roof. He was someone who made me feel again. Someone who reminded me that life, even after loss and loneliness, could still surprise me with something beautiful. And that was the beginning of a story I never thought I'd get to tell.